Sports Desk is brought to you by Xfinity.
The Xfinity Sports Desk, brought to you by Xfinity. And we do it every night here on the Sports Call before we get to your phone lines. And again, the trending story today was Matt Cullen and the response he got from his not only former teammates, but also current teammates, and deciding to retire at the age of 42. And he put together a very nice video, or the Penguins did, that was on their website, 4 minutes of a fond farewell and thank you to not only the teammates in Pittsburgh, management of Pittsburgh, ownership, but also the fans of Pittsburgh. So it was very nicely done, and we wish him all the best. There was a hockey move today. Michael Furlan goes to Vancouver on a 4-year deal for $3.5 million. That's the only thing going on there, and not much in baseball, although there is a rumor that the San Diego Padres, which have a deep and rich farm system, right now, you know, they're way out of the contention for division. The Dodgers are running away over Arizona and San Diego. However, the Padres are just 2 games out of a wild card. They believe they can get there. They need starting pitching. They're looking at Noah Syndergaard from the Mets, who also have another guy there that's in big demand, and that would be Wheeler, their starting pitcher. So we'll see what the Mets do in that. And these are the kind of players who are going to be available if you make the right offer, and San Diego certainly has a deep one. The Pirates resume on Friday against the Cubs. That's the first of 3 at Wrigley Field. The Cubs are in first place, yet Joe Maddon seems to be on the hot seat. To which I bring in Gene Collier once again. And Joe Maddon showed some of that frustration, and we saw him in Pittsburgh when he tried to, at least wanted to make you think he wanted to get to Clint Hurdle. But that was not a very interesting effort to get around Joe West. You should be able to get around Joe West.
Should.
He didn't.
Should.
You think he really meant to?
No.
No. Show.
Joe, I think, you know, even at his advanced age, you should be able to, you know, get around the edge on Joe West. Yeah, apparently Joe Maddon is feeling some pressure there in Chicago. I'll never be able to figure that out. I think he's one of the best managers in the game. I think most teams would like to have him. But this is the nature of the sport. You know, whenever your team is not doing what upper management thinks it ought to be doing, the manager's inevitably in some trouble.
Yeah, it also shows you expectations. The Cubs are still in first place.
Absolutely.
And they're talking about getting rid of things, changing things. The Pirates are where they are, and you hear no such talk. That's because you're not going to ever hear that kind of talk with this team, and that's just the way they operate. And I understand it, but I don't get it at times. We'll see what. We're going out to the Bordas and Bordas Hotline. We have a lot of people. Let's get right to them. Al in Bethel Park is first. What's up, Al? How are you?
Hey, Bob. How you doing?
Okay, thanks.
Good. Yesterday, you guys had some calls about today's generation of players, and a caller said that Babe Ruth is the greatest baseball player of all time.
Yeah.
To me, any baseball player before Jackie Robinson should be disqualified or have an asterisk because it was before segregation. So to me, the greatest baseball player of all time is Willie Mays. Any player that played before any Latin, Asian, or baseball player cannot be counted as the greatest baseball player of all time because they didn't play against all baseball players. So let's end this discussion about Babe Ruth until all baseball players were allowed to play. Thank you.
Al had an agenda there.
Okay.
I mean, how do you penalize someone who's playing against who he was allowed to play against at the time? I don't know. I mean, I understand that point, but I also know that statistics, every time you look at decades and eras, they're different. Live ball era, dead ball era, there's always something to talk about and debate. And whether or not this guy would be good enough today as he was 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I mean, there's no good answer for that, is there?
No, I mean, caller makes an excellent point, legitimate point. I don't disagree with him, but I don't think you can hold it against Babe Ruth that he wasn't playing against black players. I think had he played in this era right now, he'd be one of the best players in the game.
I agree, but I also understand the point of the caller. And,
sure.
You know, all of a sudden, there was an influx of great players because it was about time that they did. Robinson led the way. But, you know, Babe Ruth was still a great player. I'm never going to sit here and say he wasn't a great player.
I don't think we're going to wipe his records off the books.
Bob in Clearfield. What's up, Bob? How are you?
Hi, gentlemen. Thank you very much. You know,
Good.
I think the Pirates at this point in time could best be described as a competitive non-contender, capable of stealing important series away from the 3 teams ahead of them and to their detriment, which I believe he said could compel the teams ahead of them to make moves that to improve the teams, giving out more than they would have otherwise had done. More or less, he said, a desperation move. As far as trading for Felipe Vasquez, I think the minimum return should be 2 blue-chip, major league-ready pitchers and a blue-chip position player, preferably a catcher, And he said the only people who seem to have that much in their system right now are the Dodgers. So, hey, thanks very much. Looking for your thoughts.
All right, thanks, Bob. Gene, what's your take on that? And
Yeah,
how much
the Dodgers seem to be interested in this, and certainly they have the inventory to make a major trade. But I don't think Vasquez will get anywhere close to what you're asking for him. He might get a blue chip prospect, certainly not 2 pitchers and a position player. I mean, that's not going to happen.
Madison Bumgarner's a guy the Giants
Also
are available, and they want a lot. Which
Right.
I'm not talking about the Pirates necessarily, and I found it interesting, his description of a competitive non-contender,
Yeah.
which is interesting to hear. But how much would you get up for him? I mean, he's still an older pitcher.
Not a lot. The Giants know that they're not going to get a lot for him, but I think you could enter into that discussion, certainly. I mean, the Pirates are desperate for starting pitching, and he's, still has a chance to be a good one.
John in Freedom is next up. Hello, John. Welcome to the Sports Call. How are you?
Yeah, hi, Bob. I'm doing great. How are you?
We're good. Thanks.
Yeah, hey, I mean, when all these players start coming off the IL with the roster doing as well as they are, like Cervelli and the shortstop that got hurt in the collision with Marte, I mean, what do you do with these guys?
Well, first of all, I don't know how close they are. Cervelli, if he's not going to catch, I don't know what value he has, Gene. I really don't. He has to have a bigger bat than what he's hitting, which right now is under 200. And if he can't catch, I don't know where you put him. And quite frankly, there is no role. He's roadblock every single position there. So I think this will be his final year here. As far as Gonzalez, he's still got a while to go. Taillon's making progress, but it's slow. I don't expect any of those guys to come back and supplant anyone who's here right now. Do you, Gene?
No, I don't expect to see Taillon until late August, early September, if then. And as for Cervelli and Polanco, among the Pirates' problems, I wouldn't list anywhere near the top finding a place for Cervelli and Polanco to play. They're just not good enough to play on this team right now, the way it's going offensively. So, some decisions have to be made there, but I don't think they're that important.
We have some tweets in, so I'll read those to you on our Twitter inbox at KDPomp, at Gene Collier. PA Ram 59 says, I lost all respect for Joe Madden following his comment concerning Gung's leg injury in 2015. Plantar fasciitis, the man is classless. That was below the belt and didn't need to happen. And he did it. And it shows a lot of, his insensitivity to a situation that was a desperate one for Jung Ho Gung at the time. Matt Sample said, when is Josh Bell's contract up? The Pirates keep a player with 50 home runs? Yeah, sure. Matt, it's not for, they own him for 3 more years. Right. So they don't have to make any decisions. And quite frankly, with him having Scott Boras as his agent, I do not expect Boras to be willing to give up arbitration years unless the Pirates make it worth it. Right? I mean, they're not. He's not going to get offered what was Marte or Polanco was offered. They were willing to take it, which was a good deal for them because it's guaranteed money, I suppose, and it's certainly a good deal for the Pirates. But in this case, I don't think he's going to settle for anything unless it's, what would you expect he's going to get in arbitration?
Well, I mean, the only way that Bell signs here for long term, by that I mean 5, 6, 13 years, is if the Pirates are willing to make him at least a $20 million player, and I don't think the Pirates are ever going to have a $20 million player. So he's going to follow the course that all players like him in Pittsburgh have followed. He's going to be here through his arbitration years probably, and then he's going to be gone. That's where the Pirates are, and that's where they're going to stay.
We have Mel, Jim, Pete, Rick, and Waylon all on the lines. We'll get to your calls next. This is the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, Pittsburgh CW.